little bit.
Yeah, we're in the process
Okay.
of going live.
I can adjust. Let me see. Let me make sure I'm coming into you on the right speaker here. And I am.
Awesome. And then at the end of our session, we'll pop over to High Fidelity and you'll be joining us there.
Cool. Yeah, absolutely.
Awesome. Great. Hey, everybody. I'm so glad to welcome Philip Rosedale to join us today. And I'm very glad to see all of you joining us here for our talk. Philip is, he is legendary. And I know there's some younger people in our audience that don't know him and his background, but he's the founder of Linden Labs, which created the legendary Second Life, the first online virtual world. And I'll get into his specific bio in a bit. But I just wanted you to know why I've invited Philip to join us today. He's been studying the dynamics of human interaction in society in the context of digital technologies for most of his career. And here we are in a culture, a society that is quickly and dynamically evolving to adapt to technology in these virtual spaces. And it's something that needs some actual thought. And there have been people such as Philip who have put a lot of thought into this. And these conversations are really important to make sure that we're not only creating fair and equitable spaces here, but then we're also thinking about how it affects our humanness and our core being. So let me read his actual bio to you. In 1995, Philip Rosedale created an innovative internet video conferencing product, BREW, which was later acquired by Real Networks, where in 1996, he went on to become vice president and CTO. In 1999, Rosedale left Real Networks, founded Linden Lab, and built a virtual civilization called Second Life, creating an open-ended, internet-connected virtual world. Following Second Life, Rosedale worked on several projects related to distributed work and contributing. Excited by innovations in these areas and the proliferation of new VR-enabling devices, he re-entered the virtual world space in 2013, founding High Fidelity. Philip holds a BS in physics from the University of California, San Diego. So welcome, Philip.
Thank you. Thanks for having me. It's fun.
So how are you today?
Well, I'm good. It's been an exciting morning for all of us, I know, watching the inauguration.
Yep. Quite the auspicious day, and we will see what the future holds. So we are here to.
As you said, I think there are so many parallels between what's happening in the real world now and what has happened and is going to happen kind of in virtual worlds. It's very interesting to watch the interplay of what works here, what works there, what we can learn from each.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Well, tell us about that. So back when you first did Second Life, you were thinking about those interactions and the way people are interacting. And I'm just curious about lessons learned over the past several decades of watching the human experience unfold like that.
You know, the original inspiration for me with regard to Second Life into virtual worlds was a kind of a physical one. My background is physics, and when I was a kid, I was also interested in that kind of the way things work sort of stuff, you know, how do atoms and molecules work and how do cells work and how do our bodies work. And so when I started programming computers and then even more so when computers began to be networked, I was fascinated by this big idea that, and I still am, that you could redo the laws of physics inside a computer. You could have a kind of a pocket world. And of course, now we have a lot of cool science fiction and stuff around that idea. But you could somehow kind of create another universe and you could go in there and explore and make things, and maybe there'd be evolution, you know, maybe there'd be all kinds of different things that we've never seen here. And so the original magic for me of virtual worlds was wanting to do that, was wanting to kind of go into space, if you will. But instead of going into outer space, I wanted to make space by simulating it somehow on a computer. And over the years, and especially today, I've learned more about, and now probably spend an equal amount of time thinking about the impact that these sorts of systems have on us as people. You know, Facebook started at the same time as Second Life, and there were many comparisons made between the two in the early years because they both became well known at about the same time. And I think it's interesting to look back on, you know, what went wrong, you know, with people coming together on Facebook and what went right, and then what went wrong and right with something like Second Life. And it's an interesting comparison to make.
So you've been studying these interactions this whole time, and I'd love to hear about what you're working on now with creating the high fidelity space.
Well, the high fidelity story is equally interesting and fun. 6 years ago, when the very first chips came out that were going to be in the Oculus Rift headset, the VR headset, I got one of those chips and I started playing with it. And because I had had such a lifelong interest in virtual worlds and also the ways that we could immerse ourselves in them, I knew right away that the Oculus Rift, at least at a basic level, was going to work, and that there would be inexpensive ways for you to immerse yourself with these goggles or whatever in another world. And so I started, my co-founders and I shifted what we were doing to high fidelity right at that moment in late 2013, early 2014. And we started as quickly as we could hiring a team and building a whole new software platform that was designed to be a completely immersive virtual world, enormous, the metaverse, like we hear people talk about a lot, and designed entirely for these VR headsets. And then what happened about 2 years ago, 2019, if you were really thinking about this stuff like I was, you realized that it wasn't going to happen, that the VR headsets weren't going to be used by a broad enough set of people around the world to create a new world accessible through these devices. And so in 2019, we shut it all down. We made this decision to go from being a 100-person company to a 20-person company and take a look at everything we had built and try to think of how we could make another virtual world with the parts, but not using these VR headsets.
Mm-hmm.
And the thing that we discovered, and this was just wonderful fortune, so to speak, in late 2019, we said, hey, wait, what if we took only the audio, only the ability to hear each other in 3D? What if we could put that on a web page so that anybody could get to it? Not even, they wouldn't even have to download anything. They certainly wouldn't have to buy a VR.
Is that me or him? Okay. Philip, you're frozen for me. Give us a second. Technology is not always our friend these days. Oops. So while we wait for Philip to come back, after Philip's talk, we'll hold a networking session in his new audio networking platform, High Fidelity. So for those of you that have been intimidated by the video type of networking, this is your chance to merely talk to people in a voice first, voice only environment. It is, you'll need wired headphones to enjoy the experience, but it's a place to have a conversation that sounds quite like a typical networking event or cocktail party. So be sure to get wired headphones, and we look forward to seeing you there. Philip's going to join us for a bit inside of High Fidelity at the end of our session. So don't miss it. This is your chance to talk to the legendary founder of Second Life. And while we wait for Philip to get back on, I'll give you a reminder about tomorrow. We have a fabulous lineup of panels for tomorrow, along with a masterclass with futurist Mark Parrott. The future is uncertain, but Mark will show you the techniques used by futurists to help predict the future. Let's give 2021 a little help to be the great year that we all want it to be by taking a little peek in the future so we can nudge it along to something brighter. Also, if you want to attend the high stakes pitch in person at the downtown library, be sure to get your ticket today, as those tickets will no longer be on sale tomorrow. It will be live streamed as part of your registration here, but if you want to come be present, then you will need a ticket, and that choice has to be made today. So we are still waiting for Philip, but I am going to give you a little more information about High Fidelity. There is a little explainer video on the High Fidelity networking session that is located right after Philip's session. And it just describes a little bit how to log in, hopefully maybe it's been helpful to those that want to prepare for the high fidelity networking session. No one's in there right now. Well, there is someone in there right now, but generally we'll just head over there after we're done talking with Philip. That experience is basically you have a little dot avatar, the little cone. Your cone is who you're talking to. So just like at a cocktail party, wherever your cone is pointed is where you are pointed. If you turn away from somebody at a cocktail party or walk away from someone at a cocktail party, you will not hear them as loudly, or maybe you won't even hear them at all. So the same principle applies here. So just like Philip's been talking, that you can create certain rules of engagement and certain physics rules even, the way that audio experience works, it's all about where your avatar is located and where it's pointed, just like our own physical bodies in relation to our friends or counterparts that we're discussing something with. So other things about the panels tomorrow, while you are setting your agenda, we will have a panel that is a continuation of our discussion about equity and entrepreneurship. Last September, we held a 4-part series called Resolve, in which we invited founders of color, investors of color, and others that are in that space to talk about what some of the obstacles have been and what the challenges need to be solved to better equalize the playing field for all entrepreneurs. We also have a masterclass with Mark Parrott, which will be exciting. I described that earlier. He's a futurist, so we'll see what the future brings. And our final panel of the day is called Future of Baton Rouge, where we will have a lively and invigorating discussion about what we envision and want to envision for the future of Baton Rouge. Our panelists include entrepreneurs and other community leaders, and we're excited to hear what they have in store for that. Thank you for our sponsors. I do want to make sure to mention our sponsors. We're very proud and pleased to have Lucid as our presenting sponsor, and our other sponsors include High Fidelity, Resilia, Stone Pigman, and Baton Rouge Business Report, along with many other supporting and featured sponsors and event partners such as JCW, RepCap, Theater Baton Rouge, Arts Council. And as always, we're always grateful to all of our partners in the community, everyone from BRAC to SCORE to SBDC and Metromorphosis, and those that are our partners around the state who help get the word out for our programs or any needs that we may have. So we're all connected, and it's all a fantastic interconnected community. For those of you watching, I just want to say thank you for coming today. Entrepreneurship can feel very lonely, and those who have been an entrepreneur, particularly when they don't have a well-connected community around them or community around them that understands entrepreneurship, they can find themselves feeling kind of like a fish out of water. And they talk to their friends who are buying new houses and buying new cars and all settled into their life with great benefits. And entrepreneurs a little more unsteady and uncertain sometimes until they finally have their growing concern. So for those of you who are starting businesses, keep going. And I'm glad you're here. For those of you that support entrepreneurs, thank you, because that is an essential part of everyone's success. I'm getting all teary-eyed because I love y'all. I have loved these past 2 days of sessions. I feel like this community is one of the most more enjoyable and fantastic communities on the planet. And I am so honored that we've been able to produce BREW for you here. So any word on Philip? I'm asking my crew. Philip's heading back on. Fantastic. He's going to show up and go, why are you all teary-eyed? I'm like, because I teared up over loving on entrepreneurs. All right. Well, y'all hang tight because we're going to get back into our fireside chat with Philip Rosedale, founder of High Fidelity, and the big mind behind Second Life and the virtual online community world. So hang on. Okay. Go. He's coming. He's coming. I promise. I promise. So y'all put questions in the chat right now, because if you've got a question that you want to ask him, I can either ask him when he shows up, or I can we can talk to him directly when we head over to Second Life. So
He's coming. Our fireside chat.
Apologize. So put questions in the chat. There's a Q&A section. I also will be checking the chat itself. I already see a Q&A question. Fantastic. And I am super excited to see the comments that we have happening in the chat right now. Thank you so much. All right, so while Philip is getting on, I'll tell you the story of how we met. So I was at a conference where Philip was the speaker, and it was a particular conference that was designed in a way that there was no speaker room. It was one room for everybody. And the goal of the conference was to encourage the speakers to intermingle and hang out all day and just be there to meet people. So everybody got to meet speakers. It was a fantastic experience. And Philip and I had some entertaining conversations. Then on our flight home, we happened to sit on the same flight. It was mostly empty flight. So we just sat next to each other, and I talked to Philip for about 3 hours. And it was amazing. It was the most entertaining and interesting conversation that you could have on an airplane. We talked about the human dynamics. And that was when I really understood that what Second Life was, it wasn't about technology. It was about people and our own interaction and experience with each other. And it was fascinating. There's things that I still remember from that talk that I remember now. The conversation wove into like power dynamics and interacting with gender interactions, and so interacting with men. And so there's things that I've learned as a female interacting with men that I learned from Philip Rosedale. Oh, good golly. Okay, I now have news on what happened to Philip. His neighborhood just had a power outage. So he's going to be calling in on phone. So just give us a moment and we will dial him in. Wow, technology is very different from being in person, isn't it? Because like this is equivalent to like he fell off the stage. So we're trying to get the virtual EMS here, get him dialed in, and we will soon be talking to Philip Rosedale. All right, I'm going to check the chat and see what y'all are saying in here. Let's see. I am seeing this. David Crace has read the book about the creation of Second Life by Linden Lab, which is fantastic. And he also did a study on that. David, I really hope I'm looking forward to the questions that you want to ask him. So that's going to be fun. Let's see, what else do we have? We have, let's see, we have a question that's going to come in. High fidelity. How does high fidelity work for people with deafness or hearing impairment? Is automated captioning available? That's a good question for him. Right now it's beta. So, oh, he's coming in. He's coming in. Woo! All right. Philip, you there yet? Can we hear you? Can we hear you?
Hello.
Hello. Yes, you're here. Woo-hoo.
Hi. Hang on a second. There we go. Okay. So sorry about that. We are in the middle of some network problems, so I've switched to phone network. So let's give this a try.
Yeah. So I was just joking with my audience. Thanks for leaving me in the lurch there because I had to ad-lib it for about 5 minutes. But it was the virtual version of you falling off the stage. I bet you're okay. EMS came and patched you up.
You know, when you've got your kids, everybody at home doing school from home, it's quite a mess. So I've got kids running around in the house trying to get reconnected here.
Oh yeah. That's a big problem. That's a big problem. Yeah. So awesome. So where were we?
Right.
You were describing high fidelity and the lessons learned and turning it into an audio only platform.
Right. So we started, we before COVID, we had this idea to try to just use audio and see what that would feel like for people. And as soon as we started using it ourselves for our meetings as a company, we were really delighted by it, and we felt like there was a there that if we just used the audio as a way of letting people move around in a two-dimensional space, not even a three-dimensional space necessarily, that the fact that they'd be able to hear each other coming from the right direction, and that everybody could just sit and talk all the time and not have to worry about stepping on each other and interrupting, which was the feeling that our system gave, that it'd be a remarkable thing. And so then COVID happened. And so we hustled to get a version of High Fidelity up on our website, which is what's there now. And that version lets you create a browser-based two-dimensional world and then invite people into it, and really have a lot of people in the same space. And you can use it for things like this, like an event, like a mixer. You can use it for parties. You can use it for company meetings. And for 2020, from about the end of May on, that's what we've been doing. And right now we're getting an API ready for people that want to use it for anything. So we're building an API that will allow you to build our spatial audio into any application, a game, an event, live music applications. And we've got bunches of people that are waiting for us to get this thing working so they can give it a try.
Makes a lot of sense. Yeah, because you can hear someone else typing on their keyboard and hear them breathing. It's pretty impressive
Feels good.
experience. Yeah, yeah. It feels very
The,
human. Like it's human. It's nice. It feels like real life and things that we don't get to do anymore.
I know, for the people who remember it, it kind of captures that feeling of being on the phone back in the old days of the phone. I should have one sitting at my desk here, but the twisty wire and the old phones that, for those my people that are my age, remember, when you wanted to talk to your friends after school, you dragged the phone around the corner and you hid in the hallway or in the closet or in your room or whatever and talked to your friends. And
Cord all
feeling
stretched.
of being, yeah, we all had that cord, right? I think we all had that same cord.
So same little banana shaped phone. Yeah.
Yeah.
So I'm curious about your abandonment of the AR goggles. And the reason why is that, there's all these people that are talking right now of, oh, everything's going digital first. It's going to be immersive experiences. Before you know it, everyone's going to be using VR because we're going that direction. So tell me what led for you to significantly change your business when you downsized from 100 employees down to, I think you said 20, when you made the call. Like, that's a huge decision that you had to have been very convicted of something to have made such a drastic kind of a pivot.
Well, it's a different answer for VR and for AR, but let me start maybe with VR. VR is wonderful in the sense that you put this headset on and you're completely transported into another world. And, there are VR applications that are doing great. Things like training, a lot of industrial and work-related applications where we're teaching you to do something with your hands, using VR. That's an amazing, wonderful idea. It's just that for us and for me, my life's been all about consumer experiences where everybody was together and you were meeting new people and you were having this, real world experience. And that's what doesn't work with VR. The problem with VR is a couple of big things. They're the ones everybody can point out, like they're a bit uncomfortable, or the graphics aren't good enough and stuff like that. But there's more important things that I think we kind of didn't miss. I missed it, and I think everybody else did too at the outset. One of them is that the experience of putting on a VR headset is very different for different kinds of people. Because a VR headset fundamentally blinds you, it is a blindfold. You are putting on a blindfold. As you can imagine, the willingness of different kinds of people to do that is very different. If you don't feel safe in the real world, you are not going to put on a blindfold. On the other hand, if you're a big white guy, you're going to put that thing on and say, kick me, put a sign on me. You're going to kind of go with it. But that's not for everybody. And so one of the things we realized that I think was, as you said, was an irreversible, very serious problem. And again, it kind of mirrors what we're going through as a society right now, is that these VR headsets are not for everybody. They're divisive. They're not inclusive in people's ability to use them. And so that alone basically eliminates them as a new kind of social medium. Um, so I think that's a very serious thing. There are the other big technical problem I'd say with VR headsets is you can't type when you have them on. And as humans, we type a lot. There's a lot of ways we communicate. Yeah, exactly. We've tried everything, I feel like the Blade Runner guy, we've tried everything. We tried everything to make people able to type, but nobody's been able to come up with a way to type quickly, say more than 40 words per minute in VR. And I think that one is also a game ender for it. Now, I think in 5 years, we'll have VR headsets that can track our hands well enough that we can type, or they'll show us a keyboard and we can look down at it and use it. We'll get there. We'll get there in 5 years. But to do that, we have to be able to look through, and this gets to AR. We have to be able to look through the VR headset so clearly that we can see with no latency, no delay, we can see our fingers over a keyboard. So we have to get to that, and it's going to take 5 years. AR is a different problem.
Oh, really?
AR is a different problem. First of all, it's technically harder because you have to solve all the problems I just said and have a portable device and show you the world around you while you're using it. So basically, you kind of just layered two big problems on. The thing's got to be really light. It's got to be probably really comfortable, more comfortable than the goggles. It's got to look good, right? I mean, it's got to not be so ridiculous that human beings would be willing to wear it. And so there's significant technical challenges added to AR. There is a big design challenge with AR as well, and a big both social, technical, and kind of privacy and legal problem, which is that AR devices require a certain knowledge of the world around them.
Mhm.
You need to know what living room you're in right now. You need to know what way you're looking. You need to know exactly where you are. And that requires gathering information about the real world that, frankly and appropriately, people are not comfortable with right now, and they shouldn't be. So we have this huge problem with AR, which is we need to understand exactly what space we're in. And to do that, we need to look at the spaces and gather all this data. And that creates issues for privacy and surveillance that are, I don't think they're insurmountable, but as a technologist for a long time, I think we're a long ways out. So I think we might be 10 years out on AR. So I think that's the challenge right now. These things are going to happen. I've been waiting for them my whole life, but I think it's 5 years for VR and another 10 years for AR.
Do you think that's optimistic, or do you think that's the conservative estimate?
Well, anybody who knows me, who's sitting here with me, would know, and you too, would know that I'm an optimist. So it's probably optimistic, but I think it's doable.
Yeah. So there's a couple things that I'd love to talk to you about. And one is that question of the hard decision. When you came to this realization that was pretty big realization, you made that hard decision. Do you mind sharing with our entrepreneurs and founders a little bit about kind of going through that process? If there's something there that you'd like to share about making those hard decisions at the point that you made that decision to move away from those technologies.
I've had to make a couple of decisions. I've had enough of an entrepreneurial career now that I've had to face that moment a few times, and it's always hard. I mean, the thing about entrepreneurship is that you believe irrationally in something until you can't anymore, And so I think the successful entrepreneur tries very, very hard and is the craziest believer in something, up until they finally kind of have to call it. So I know for us, realizing that VR was going to be divisive and it wasn't going to be inclusive and it wasn't going to make it in its current form. I mean, the other dynamic around that was that Facebook came to own the entire market by its purchase of Oculus, and then the fact that the Oculus kind of succeeded where everything else didn't succeed as much, with the Quest, and it just left a situation where you only had one company that was in control of the whole thing, and that company's got some issues, and so anyway, the moment that I remember I guess the advice I would say, or the moment I can really remember, is you've got to kind of believe in your idea, and then you've got to very suddenly stop. And of course, the boat wake of that is all of your team saying, but wait, but wait, but wait. And so we kind of had this moment that I think was like that scene in the Titanic, where the guy that built the boat is like, the boat is going to sink. And everybody's like, but no, it's unsinkable. Like you told us, it's unsinkable. And he's like, it's going to sink. It's going to sink in 8 hours. And they're like, well, we'll pump the water out. And he was like, no, it's going to the bottom, you know? And I think I kind of had that moment. And so as an entrepreneur, I had to be a leader like that. I had to really say to people, I know. We all believe in this idea and we want to see, people in headsets in virtual worlds, but it's not going to happen right now. I think the other thing is to always just be realistic about runway. I mean, it's not so much that it's not going to happen or that my belief in VR, for example, as a broad phenomena is wrong. It isn't. But you got to be practical about how much runway you have as a company. I mean, any company, you've only got, you need to be operating on something now and you need to be successful in the next few years. Otherwise, why would you be doing it? You can't just hibernate everything and wait for 5 years or 7 years to get something going. And so it was a lot of tough conversations. We were what we are, I have always been, my co-founders, my partners in crime and this whole thing have always been very, people oriented and, very focused on doing the right thing. And so, the process of downsizing and all that, I think we did wonderfully, which is basically, if you reach a point where you have to like let people go or whatever, you need to meet with every person one-on-one and, make sure they understand what their options are and, what's going to happen next. I mean, those are the kinds of things that, you learn over time, having done this for, I can't believe it, but 30 years now.
That was a lot of meetings. You had a lot of meetings there, didn't you? Yeah.
I sure did. And I did that with Second Life too. We almost thought Second Life was going to fail, believe it or not, just before we became successful. And we didn't lay off as many people, but we laid off 11.
Yeah.
And it was hard.
That was a lot. It's a lot. So just before your panel, we had a conversation about raising capital. And I know you've raised a lot of capital. 60 million for High Fidelity, is that right?
Yeah, gosh, I never thought about it, but I bet I've raised just over $100 million over my career. About 75, 74 is what we've raised for High Fidelity. And Second Life, yeah, I think we raised about 30, although I was very proud of the fact that we didn't need about the last 10 million in Second Life. We reached profitability having used about 20, $21 million.
That's great. That's great. So any like nuggets of wisdom through that decades and long process of all of that for any of our investor ready or investor seeking entrepreneurs?
Well, there are a lot of different types of projects out there, and I've become more respectful of that as I've gotten older and wiser. But for the types of things that I've always worked on, they've always been things that where the greatest passion of both myself and the people that worked with me was to do a specific thing that at the outset was generally thought by others to be crazy or irrational or whatever, but to keep on trying to do that one thing. I think it's easiest as an entrepreneur to not trouble yourself with things like fundraising too much, and instead to make sure that you understand and are doing exactly and only that one crazy thing that nobody else thinks you can do, and that you're hiring people who also share that passion. Like one piece of advice would be hiring like highly skilled people or specialists or whatever. I don't really think that I gave a talk one time at a conference called Hire the B Players. It was, of course, contentious. I was making a point, which was, and I think I was prescient about this because this is like 10 years ago, that it isn't all about like hiring all these Ivy League graduates or something to work on a problem for you. Most problems only have a couple of really hard parts to them. Maybe you need one person at your company who's like this incredible super genius about some specialized area of knowledge. But mostly what you need are people that enjoy working together and are passionate about the thing. In the case of Second Life, it was a big open virtual world where you could make stuff. That's what it was. Everybody that came to us had some connection to that mission. I mean, not everybody, but boy, darn near everybody at Second Life. and it worked out really well. But we didn't have to like give, very super difficult interviews and, have people write code on whiteboards. We didn't have to do any of that stuff. What we did have to do was make sure that we had the right mix of people and we had a seat at the table for all of these wonderful people that walked in saying, I have to work on this. You have to let me come join you. That's how we got a lot of our people in Second Life.
So let's see, 207, great. So y'all, if you have any questions, be sure to ask them in the chat because we're going to take a few questions and then we'll spend the last few minutes of our session actually heading over to Second Life. So y'all are there, Second Life networking. Sorry, not Second Life. That'd be fun.
We could do that too. That high fidelity.
Making sure that we're there when that high fidelity networking session begins. So if you have any questions, be sure to put them in the chat. So I'm curious, what's next on the horizon? Like for you, for the world's growing adoption of technology. I'm curious about your thoughts about the future.
There are so many interesting things happening. So first of all, I think that the most important technology in the world, for good and evil, the most important technology for all of us to be thinking about, to be regulating, to be working in, to be investing in and entrepreneuring in, is artificial intelligence. There is no question about it. That is the technology that is the internet. When I became an entrepreneur and I got out of college and I got the opportunity to work at Real Networks, as you said, that was the moment when the internet happened. And so we suddenly had, we had already had computers, but we suddenly had computers we could connect together with cables. And that my whole career is successful ideas and some unsuccessful ideas around connecting computers together with cables, And the idea right now is artificial intelligence. If you look at things like Style GAN, which is the thing that does amazing kind of creates images. If you look at GPT-3, the famous AI from OpenAI, artificial intelligence company, if you look at what those things are doing, you are witnessing the very moment where our machines become as powerful as our own brains. And you can have tons of philosophical arguments about what that means, but one thing is absolutely not arguable, which is that the world is about to be very, very substantially altered by intelligent processes that we normally have thought of as being things only people could do, being done not just by computers, but being done hundreds and then thousands of times better than us. So I think that that is the thing that everybody should be working on. If you're a young entrepreneur and you're not working on artificial intelligence right now, I would only wonder why. I don't think there's anything like that.
Wow. There's a lot of ramifications to consider. Thousands or millions of, or billions or trillions of AIs intersecting with the human experience. That starts to go a lot of different ways very quickly.
Absolutely.
It can go south very quickly.
Yes. I mean, obviously, we're at a point, and I don't even know how I, as a leader and as a communicator and sometimes as a speaker, can best convey this, but I feel it imperative that I do consider that, which is, yes, it could go very wrong. We've all got to engage in this together. We're going to have to make economically irrational decisions sometimes. For example, there are cases where it is not going to make sense to have AIs trying to do things because it is far too dangerous. We've already seen that in advertising suggestions, which is what has gotten us in the bad situation that we're in with respect to YouTube and Facebook groups. Those are examples where we're allowing artificial intelligences to make suggestions for us with an objective function of maximizing our engagement or participation. There have been books written about that. There have been talks given. I've been 100% there along on that for the ride, and it's a disaster. We cannot allow AIs to make suggestions about what videos we watch. That's one example of something that is incredibly dangerous. We need to not do it. And that the decision to not do it has to be against economic forces. We want to make money. It's tempting, convincing people to look at advertisements is a huge opportunity for personal wealth. We need to not take it.
That's an interesting comment that you said about the economic forces, because I feel like that can very quickly veer things into territory that makes us less human or interact more poorly. And, you know, there's children growing up right now that their entire experience is being lived out online in their social media profiles. And, you know, there's certain steps that a child should go through to develop a sense of self. And when half that self exists through the imagery that they're portraying online, what is their actual sense of self? And what are the ramifications for that child, you know, 20, 30, 50 years from now? That's a,
You know, to put a finer point on that, I so agree with you. And I think a specific example, and I have 4 kids myself, as you know, I think that the ability to interact with strangers as a growing person is absolutely key to the establishment of the self. Again, much has been written about this, and I didn't get. I tell people go look it up. But the establishment of your own self image as a by interacting with people you don't know is a critical part of the human experience. And of course, it's what we've lost with COVID, which is itself a devastatingly dangerous situation beyond any medical risk that we face, which is of course substantial as well. The fact that we're not interacting with strangers in the right way, in the way that we used to, is very, very dangerous. And I think as a technologist, I'm looking at a lot of different ways, very actively, for example, with high fidelity, to get people to interact with strangers in some sort of a medium that's online and is as close to the human face-to-face experience as possible. I think that's very important as well.
well, I'm glad that you mentioned that, because when we go to high fidelity, there's people are going to meet someone new there that's different. And, you know, it's possible that people will choose to shy away from it and be, oh, okay, I have some work to do because I don't want to go talk to strangers. Like, any encouragement for those people
Right.
about what to expect, and also how do they get through that feeling that's pent up over a year of quarantine, to get back and try something new.
Yeah. You know, when you jump in there, realize that, of course, you can use your arrow keys and you can move around. If you're on your phone, you can even drag the screen and just lurk. Just sit where you can hear Wendy and I standing and talking. That that very human experience of being able to, in an analog way, go from being way far away from a conversation to on the outskirts of it to in it. You know, that very natural kind of analog gradient where we start on the outside and we end up in the middle. That try to have that experience with high fidelity. I think that's one of the things that we really offer. One is this spatial audio, which especially I hope you have headphones. If you get headphones on, you'll see it. The other thing is the ability to move and to not speak. I was going to say, don't feel like you need to speak. Just wander around and listen, and you'll get it. You won't even need to say anything. And I bet you'll hang around for a while, and you won't log off and do